Ladies and gentlemen, before I go into what I have to say that's spoiler filled, let me read some scripture for you guys. Plead my cause, O Lord, with them that strive with me. Fight against them that fight against me. This is Psalms 35, verse 1. Do understand that we don't have to do a whole lot of fighting. We can have the Lord fight our battles, internal and external. That means whatever fears you have, the Lord can give you courage. Whatever battles you have inside with things that you don't like in yourself, the Lord can handle those things and replace them with things which are good. Mostly we fight internal battles. A lot of times we project what's inside of us to other people. If we dislike someone, it's because there's some aspect of ourselves we actually dislike. So I want to share with you that the hidden things can be overcome inside of you through the Lord, through love. Let's get into the discussion today. This is obviously spoiler filled, so if you haven't seen the movie, then probably don't get involved in this and leave comments in the comment section below, and don't check out the comment section below. But when we talk about characters, I've heard people saying that they found that Steppenwolf was a weak villain, and I'll give you my perspective of him. Okay, this is not necessarily fact. This is just my impressions of Steppenwolf throughout the movie. So what I was mainly afraid of was that Steppenwolf would look like a CG character and that he would look weird. Because in some of the early trailers, when we look at Steppenwolf when he's fighting and you freeze frame or you slow it down, he looked kind of bird-beaked and he didn't look humanoid. Well, he had humanoid form, but his face didn't look humanoid at all. It looked kind of like a Dracula, like Bram Stoker's Dracula with that long, long nose. But my fears were put aside when I saw him again in a trailer, and I thought, okay, cool. Because he looks powerful, he looks mighty, he looks really fantastic. And I was worried that, they would do something Zoid with him. So my fears were assuaged. Now, and he looks humanoid, by the way, even though we know he's not human. We can see he's not human. Now, when we look at the ship's rendition of Steppenwolf, and this was a history being given to Lex Luthor. He was learning about these otherworldly beings, and you got this digital representation of him. I kind of feared that he was just going to be this sort of doomsday-like character that had no intelligence. It was just a raging character that went, made queer noises and just kind of charged into things. And I was so relieved to know that the Steppenwolf we got from the comics, that was the Steppenwolf that was actually coming to the big screen. So those were my major fears. And it turns out that when I saw Steppenwolf on the screen, my first impression of him wasn't CGI, strangely. A lot of people were talking about him being Steve, but I saw him as a creature. I didn't necessarily see him as a human being, but a creature. And to be quite honest with you, a horrific, demonic creature determined to get what he wanted. And that, for me, was very scary. When people talk about Steppenwolf's face and the CG, I never quite got that. I never understood what they were talking about in terms of, I knew what they were saying, that because they knew he was a CG character, but I never felt like he was a CG character. There were certain moments when he moved kind of strange, but I never thought of him as a CG character because I never thought of Steppenwolf as human. I never thought of him as human. I thought of him as humanoid, but I never thought of him as human. So I never really had that problem. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is this film has a lot of horror elements to it. And so if we are looking at Steppenwolf's face here, which you guys are getting a good look at him with, you'll notice that his face has striations, and his face is pale. It's almost like a plasticky. He's a plasticky face. He's cold eyes. His eyes look like they're dead. It looks like there's no life in them. And his mouth even moves in a pasty sort of, almost makes you want to vomit kind of feeling when you look at Steppenwolf. And why I really love this character is because he literally draws from horrific elements such as Freddy Krueger from Friday the 13th. If you look at Freddy Krueger's face, it makes you want to vomit. And it's kind of all bumpy and moldy with those striations. And when you look at Steppenwolf's face, you can see that they pulled some inspiration from Freddy Krueger from Friday the 13th. And if you look at his face, Steppenwolf's face that is, you will also notice that his face looks sort of not only bumpy and purgy and kind of like Frankensteinish, but his eyes look like a cat's eyes. His eyes are kind of, they have small black pupils, and then the rest of the eye looks kind of like a cat. And he also reminds me a little bit of, sort of his face reminds me a little bit of a werewolf. Or if you have seen horror films with Werewolf Man, he's got that snout, you know, he's got that cleft lip. And he doesn't, I don't think he has fangs, but, you know, he's got that snout, he's got that cleft lip. He kind of looks like a werewolf, kind of. It's kind of clash between Freddy Krueger and a werewolf. And in the horror film Wereman, he kind of brings, he doesn't have all the hair on his face. Another way of looking at it is like a sleepwalker character. You know, in Sleepwalker, they have this snout here, and they kind of look cat-like. They got the fangs and stuff. But they're mostly this creature, and they turn into this really weird creature by the end of the movie. Well, Steppenwolf reminds me of that kind of horrific element, except he has much more Freddy Krueger-like ripped skin, almost striated skin, you know. So he kind of gives me that feel. He also gives me the feel of an old 1987 sitcom television series, which was known as Beauty and the Beast. And I loved that television series because it wasn't just a romantic story, but it was a kind of crime story, a kind of crime drama story. It was also a kind of otherworld story, that there was a whole other world underneath the streets of New York. And it also had some horrific elements. It was kind of edgy because you just never knew what Vincent, who was the Beast, what he would do next, because he was kind of unpredictable. And that led to some horrific elements, but the beauty of the film was that you don't judge someone by their appearance and even how they behave, their mannerisms. And I thought that this movie was one of the better sitcom series of 1980s. It really had a lot of depth to it. And in the end, tragically, the beauty, who was Catherine in the story, she died. She was murdered. And the Beast trips off, and he's really bordering that line. He's kind of like Batman in Batman v Superman. He's bordering that line between morality and immorality. Because this guy, I mean, the Beast mauls people. When he attacks people, he mauls them or rips them up. He doesn't necessarily kill them. And even when he was with Catherine, he was kind of like a silent guardian angel protector, moving underground and above ground. And if she ever ended up in danger, this guy would rip the shreds out of people and scare them to shitless. You know what I'm saying? This was a bad dude, you know. Again, if you haven't really seen this television series, it's old, so, you know, the prosthetics are interesting and so on. But really, the story content of these stories was really what I grew up watching, and that's the kind of stuff I used to watch. So when I look at superhero films, you know, it's kind of hard for me to, you know. All right, so I thought that Steppenwolf kind of embodied that, and you can see it in how they designed his face. So I always think that Steppenwolf is coming from a horrific way. So that uncanny valley, plasticky look, that kind of cold stare, almost inhuman stare, it worked for me, okay, on the big screen. I wanted to show you a couple other things about Steppenwolf that I thought worked for me. So there's Steppenwolf. You can see he kind of looks like this guy here with the prosthetics and everything. He really looks like him. And he also looks like this guy, right? I guess you can see that now. Now, the other thing that was really cool about Steppenwolf for me was, like I said, the almost inhumanity about him. His thing was to rule the world by fear, to convert everything into one kind of creature that would be ruled under dark side. So his motivations were pretty clear in this movie. And he was like Captain Ahab. He wanted revenge. He was shocked he couldn't recover that he had not conquered this world, and that the heroes of this world had risen up against him. And so he had a vendetta, and he was like Captain Ahab. He would die for his vendetta. But he knew he had to go about it a lot smarter than he did before, because pure force, the world could rise up and match that force and drive him back. So, and he's very powerful. You can see that the gods were shooting lightning bolts at him, and he was absorbing that energy. You saw Cyborg fire cannons at him, sonic cannons and stuff that would naturally knock out people or kill them. And it went straight through him, and he just kept on coming. You know what I'm saying? He got knocked back. You saw Wonder Woman hit him with the most powerful thing she has when she knocks those two bracelets together. He goes back, and he absorbs that. They fire missiles at this dude to blow him up. He catches one missile. The other missile goes by him, and he looks at it and he says, primitive weapon. You know, this guy looks like he's indestructible. You know what I mean? And it seems as though you got to have the armies of the world to fight this guy to beat him, you know? But he didn't bring his full arsenal this time. He was exiled from the new gods, from Darkseid. So he's really trying to get back in Darkseid's favor and get this win under his belt. So that's the villain you're dealing with. And if you think about it, in comic book lore, there are very few villains. Think about what I'm saying now. Super villains. In fact, I don't know any memorable ones, at least, who have been, their goal was to take on the world, and they didn't come from the world. They came from another world, and they were conquering other worlds. You won't find a villain like that in comic book lore. Most of the villains are men. They're human. Yes, they want to take over the world, but they're not like Steppenwolf, an otherworldly, powerful villain that's taking over the world. Now, the only other one I think about is General Zod. He was trying to terraform the world, but Steppenwolf's a little bit different. While Zod terraforms the world, he'll kill everything on the world. Steppenwolf wants to destroy the world, but he wants to create a new world. And this new world that he's trying to create, he's converting human beings into hellish beings that are tortured. Their souls are taken and sucked dry, and they're just servants, minions for Darkseid. So he's a little bit different. And the other thing about him is, whereas General Zod, he was trying to resurrect his people. You know, he had good intentions. Ares was trying to get a world where, you know, it's peaceful and stuff. This guy has no good intentions. Steppenwolf's an agent of Darkseid. He's trying to make the Earth into a hellhole like Apocalypse. That's it. And he's trying to get more servants for Darkseid as parademons. He has no good intentions whatsoever, right? And what's interesting about this is the deeper repercussions of this. Steppenwolf, basically, he rules a world by fear, okay? And he talks about the beginning of horrors, and he's so happy about it. And his face looks so cryptic and just so ugly, okay, and scary. He gives you the creeps. And I think he gives you the creeps because, like, for instance, Michael from Halloween, I forgot what it's called. Halloween 13, is it? I can't remember. Halloween, you guys know the horror film. This guy's face looks like plastic. His hair looks crazy. Yes, we're seeing his eyes here, but you can go without his eyes. You don't need his eyes. It's like inhuman. You know he's human, but he's inhuman. Same thing with Jason from Friday the 13th, right? Jason X, he's inhuman. And there's a bit of that creepy inhumanity in Steppenwolf. And so I thought they captured that uncanny valley, creepy inhumanity enough to make me scared of this character. And every time he appeared on the screen, Ciara Hinds' voice giving that sort of that majesty to him. But yet at the same time, you feel spooked. I mean, I remember when he attacked Mira. He just kind of flew out of the water and he attacked the Atlantean Guard. I actually literally got spooked by it. And those are the horror elements in this film. Of course, there's a ton of them. When the parademon slams against the window and the little girl flinches, I flinched. You know what I mean? And there are a number of other instances in the beginning of the movie, in the middle, and so on, where there were just flinching moments. You flinch. You literally you feel that shimmer of fear run through you, and it's almost like a horror movie effect. I know in Batman v Superman, when the bat jumps out of the grave towards Bruce Wayne and goes "Wah!" with black blood, it scared the shit. It sure scared the daylights out of most people, right? And even the horrific scenes in the apocalyptic scene when Batman, he has this dream and all these parademons are coming down and he's trying to fight them off and eventually the parademon knocks him out. It's kind of very, very horrific. It's a horrific scene and the music is horrific, So throughout, the theme of fear is being played throughout this Justice League movie, and I think that theme is what builds that tension, and I think Steppenwolf is an excellent villain in building that tension. People are talking about the fight scenes of Steppenwolf, but I'm thinking about when the Parademon appeared in the building and attacked Silas Stone. I literally flinched when it attacked him. The whole cinema went, I just, these creepy kind of things, that kind of make it, even the Parademons themselves, they're not just fudge, they have, this creepiness to them, but yet they look so technically sound. They almost look like soldiers. And it's kind of crazy how, Batman has to struggle with fighting these parademons, all of them. It's not an easy task for him. It's not an easy task for Flash. If Flash gets some momentum and he starts to run, yeah, it's easy work. But otherwise, he got damaged. The Flash got damaged by them. Batman got damaged by them, So I found that the threat level of this villain was definitely in my mind. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's another villain taking over the world. Not exactly. Not exactly. And for those of you who say you're tired of seeing villains take over the world, this is something for you to think about. If you think about Russia right now, all their propaganda and stuff that they're doing it and they're trying to influence elections because they're trying to take over the world. China monopolizes the economies of nations. Both of these nations, by the way, are communist nations. They're socialist or communist nations. And they're trying to take over the world. Just imagine if Russia took over the world. They say they have a democracy, but they don't. People die, people are going missing, all that kind of stuff is happening. Kind of like what happened in this movie where the scientist went missing. I mean, think for a minute. Think about the invasion. It's starting from Russia. Just think for a minute what I'm saying. Just reflect on what I'm saying for a minute. Because, sometimes you guys don't think that deeply into things, but I do. And I'm just saying, imagine if the world, there's no more freedom of choice. Everybody has to behave like a parademon, and they're slaves to the state, and you're not free to talk politics. You're not free to say what you think. You're not free to do your enterprise how you want to. You're not free to talk about God how you want to. Just imagine that. No more freedoms. You're governed by fear. Think about what I'm saying. And that's the relevance of Steppenwolf in this story. And that's what makes him so powerful in this story, that I was listening to Samuel Otten, and it's the same thing I basically said. Steppenwolf rules by fear, and fear is what implodes and destroys him. He gets consumed by fear. Because if you notice, even Wonder Woman calls him out. He says, you're such a great soldier and you want to fight battles. Why are you hiding down here in the shadows? And Steppenwolf knows he can't just go out and fight full force against mankind, because then all the tribes of man will come together, and all the Atlanteans and everybody will come together and fight him, as the Amazons did. All right, it wasn't an easy task to take on those Amazons. As much as he was, you saw him. He was talking about, when I make this triunity and I get, back as a new god, you will be my queen, you will serve me, or some kind of thing like that. And then all of these Amazons just keep pouring down from the mountain, and they're coming for Steppenwolf. What does he do? Run. He runs once he gets the mother box, right? So he knows he's not a match for all the forces of Earth, and it seems as though he's exiled to Earth. So he was either on Earth. I don't think he was on Earth. I think he was somewhere else, but he boomed to from wherever he was to Earth to get the mother box. And he also spoke about the mother boxes calling him. Of course, the fight scenes in this movie were off the charts. Love to see Wonder Woman fighting Steppenwolf. And you see again how powerful he is, because Wonder Woman can't just take him. She's good. She can fight toe to toe with him. But mainly the Justice League, if it wasn't for Superman, the Justice League would be having a very hard time taking on Steppenwolf, okay? And those Parademons. It would have had a really rough time. But Superman is on a whole other power level to the rest of the Justice League. He's on a whole other power level. And for him, Steppenwolf's not that big a deal. He can take down Steppenwolf. And that's kind of crazy, because back in the day when Steppenwolf came with all his armies and everything, it took the Atlanteans, it took the Amazonians, it took the Earthlings, all the tribes of men, it took all the gods, the old gods, to fight against Steppenwolf. And the nice thing about Steppenwolf is, as you hear about the fights and all these other things, he talks a little bit about the old gods. Like he talks about how, Diana, you're one of the old gods and the old gods are dead. And he talks about, because Diana's a fossil, she's the last remnant of the old gods, apparently. And he talks about, the Atlantean, which is Aquaman. He talks about him. So you can see that Steppenwolf. Now, what is interesting is, where did Steppenwolf get this heads up? You remember Lex Luthor in BVS was talking about, they know that the god is dead, and they've heard this from beyond the stars. Remember he was saying that? So Lex Luthor found out that by the Kryptonian ship making a broadcast, and apparently either he informed Steppenwolf that the Kryptonian was dead, or he, or somehow, by the ship, by him creating Doomsday, or by him looking up these archives, Steppenwolf somehow, some way, got wind that Superman was dead. And so Lex Luthor, some way, shape, or form, was able to transmit a signal, whether he was aware of it or not, and learned about it later, that Superman was dead. And that's why he said he's coming, and he's hungry. That was Steppenwolf. He was coming, and definitely he was hungry, because Steppenwolf feeds off of fear and the Parademons. And you saw a bunch of Parademons come in. But you know that there were Parademons on Earth as scouts, and they were scouting out for those mother boxes. And I'm not quite sure why the mother boxes awoke, but I guess all of that will be found out later on. These are some interesting questions. But at the end of the day, Steppenwolf came for the mother boxes. And how did he know which locations to go for these mother boxes? That's another good question. But it seems as though the mother boxes, when they awake, they call him. And so he's able to locate them. So in BVS, when we first see Steppenwolf, we see Lex Luthor learning about these boxes. I am pretty sure Lex Luthor, because Batman's looking at all of Lex Luthor's notes, has something to do with those mother boxes awakening. Okay? And he's saying ding, 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 ding. So he knows about the mother boxes. And it was really cool to see those mother boxes really kick into gear and fully awake and then open those boom tubes. It was crazy. The first time I saw it, it was like epic, you know. Like when it comes to presentation of these characters and stuff, man, this film was on par. It was lit. I mean, this film was lit. It had more action than BVS. It had more action than Man of Steel. It had more action than Wonder Woman. All those films combined. So it was a very lit film. I really, really enjoyed this film. But I just wanted to talk about Steppenwolf and how he impressed me as a character. And I want to go in a little bit deeper, the angle and lenses which I was coming with this movie, because this movie is a combination of different genres of film, and that's again a Zack Snyder trait. Which I said, Zack Snyder's prints are all over this movie. So Steppenwolf, he was powerful, he was intimidating, and again the Justice League was basically they kind of take him on, but not really. They were kind of no match for him, and it was because of Superman coming to the equation, because they were fighting Steppenwolf, and he realized they were no match for him. He got all three of the mother boxes. And he was telling them that you're no match for me, you know. And then Superman pops up on the scene, and that's where the tables kind of turn. And they all, as a team, fight Steppenwolf, no doubt about it. And each one of them have a role to play. But they were really happy that Superman joined in that battle, because I don't think they would have beaten Steppenwolf otherwise, which shows how much of a threat he was. And so I can't understand how anyone could say he's a weak villain, or he was a weaker villain than other villains. I thought he was a formidable threat, but I thought his story was so emotionally was strong enough, but it was simple enough that it didn't take away from the formation of the Justice League, because you have to understand this is a Justice League origin story. Now we know where the Hall of Justice will be. Now we know the full story of Wonder Woman and why she was not known through this 100 years. Now we know the story of a little bit more from Batman. Okay, we see him develop even more. I heard people say Batman made a 180-degree turn from what he was in BVS. I disagree. I think that still essentially is Batman that we were seeing on the screen. The only difference is when you go from being a loner and a guy who believes the same thing that Aquaman was saying, the strongest man is strong alone, and you have to recruit people, that's a serious challenge. And he didn't feel he was up to it, to be honest with you. And he still was Batman. He's very decisive. He still was trying to work on his own, not with the team per se. And Alfred was trying to encourage him. And I think how things worked out just well. And I really enjoyed the film because I thought that all these characters operated more or less like how they're supposed to operate. With the Flash now becoming the Flash, it's interesting that he was absolutely petrified when he saw Steppenwolf and the forces, the parademons. He was scared stiffless. Remember, this guy, Batman had seen a parademon. He had interacted with it. Wonder Woman knew about parademons. Imagine you're this guy. You deal with the average Joe criminal that's human. And now you see this drawing of a parademon. This is what made it so funny to me. I thought Ezra Miller hit it on the button. But when he was up on the rooftop and Commissioner Gordon was showing them the picture of the parademon, and Wonder Woman was saying parademons, and explaining what they do, and Batman, of course, he had seen firsthand knowledge of a parademon, so he was discussing with Commissioner Gordon, and they're all talking, and the Flash sees this for the first time. His reaction is priceless, folks. He says, "Okay." This is the dude that's enthusiastic to fight with these superheroes, but then he begins to realize how serious and how dangerous the danger that he's getting into, and so he's trying to process it in his head. And so when he says, "Okay," and his eyes are open big, it's so funny to me. It's hilarious. I mean, that was one of the Flash scenes which was tremendously funny to me. Because it's like you realize what you're actually starting to get. You're really starting to realize what you're getting into. You were all enthusiastic because there's all these cool people around you that you either idolize or you heard about. Batman was this great legend. So now I know about the Batman. So I'm really enthusiastic now, right? So he's like, I'm in. I want to ride with Batman. And, he's enthusiastic. But then he realizes the threat that he's up. He realizes the threat he's up against. And he's like, okay. It's hilarious, man. But again, I don't know. I may be laughing at that. But I didn't hear a lot of people in the cinema laughing about it. But for me, that was funny. It was a funny moment because... I process things really rapidly. So for me, going along with the Flash, and he's beginning to realize what he's getting into, and then it gets really serious when Steppenwolf, he has Silas Stone there, and they're in this underground tunnel, and he's seeing Steppenwolf killing people. He's literally snapped a woman's neck, and she falls down dead. And he's really panicking. He's hyperventilating. He's panicking. He's moving back, and he's like, guys, that's really cool. You guys really are ready to do battle and stuff, but I never did battle. And for the record, man, I just push people and run away, And for me, that was, while everybody was laughing, for me, that was, I could feel his fear. I could feel his fear inside. He's petrified because he didn't realize this is what he's getting himself into. These are real cool guys and everything, but I don't know where my place is in this. And so Batman addresses him very seriously. He looks at him very seriously and he says, all right, don't fight. Don't try to engage with anybody. Get in, get out. Save one person, And I thought that was in other words, what I like about this film is they're not trying to make comedy and slapstick and smart one-liners. They're dealing with a real situation and they deal with it seriously. You know? These are real characters. They're like real people. Like, if you go into a situation that's overwhelming you, you really want somebody who can break it down and keep it simple so you don't feel overwhelmed. And to me, that dynamic between the Flash and Batman was priceless. You know? And that was a moment that was spoiled in the clips. So if you went and watched clips of this movie, you'd have spoiled that moment for yourself going into the movie. And that's why I tell you guys, don't go into the movie trying to spoil the movie for yourself. What you really want to do is you want to go into a movie fresh. You don't want to have anything spoiled for you. So you can just start with a fresh paintbrush. Alright? So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys about Steppenwolf. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have so much more to offer, but let me just say, there's so much layers to Steppenwolf because he's like King Ahab. That's what makes it to me, not King Ahab, sorry, Captain Ahab, which is what makes it to me so attractive, this character. He's all about trying to conquer what he failed at the first time. Just like the elusive Moby Dick. This world seems to be so elusive. He seems to always lose. So at the end, you can see him struggling and he's fighting. He's like, no, you're not supposed to win. I am the world conqueror. He's conflicted within himself and he's afraid. Especially after his battle axe is broken. He becomes petrified. He becomes afraid. He's overwhelmed. And he starts to get consumed by fear. And his own parademons turn against him. Just basically embodying the fear that's consuming him at the same point in time. And he gets boom-tubed off the planet. And all of the Justice League watches it in great horror because it's a horrific moment. And they're just speechless. And I thought that that was a wonderful moment there, whether it was Joss Whedon or Zack Snyder. And the nice thing about it is we don't know if he's dead or alive. We don't know if he's dead or alive, folks. You know, and we know he's spiraling up into that boom tube in a sort of feeling of perilousness. Now, there are parallels between Thor Ragnarok and this movie. They have their own version of a boom tube, if you think about it. They have this gatekeeper thing that Thor was going up into, and Hela was attacking him, and Loki was going up into. So they had their version of boom tube as well, and they had their version of a villain who also wanted to conquer different worlds in Hela. And so if you look at it, both movies were actually covering similar themes. And maybe some people who watch the Marvel film and then come back and watch this film and see a world-conquering villain, they would say, somebody conquering the world again, right? So I can get that. I get that people can disengage, but sometimes you have to look for depth in things, okay? And for me, I liked this villain because I thought Thor Ragnarok kind of introduced the fact that here is a world-conquering villain. I mean, we all knew that Steppenwolf was a world-conquering villain. We knew this from since BVS. But I think Thor Ragnarok, because some people laugh their bellies full, they may go into this villain saying, not another world-conquering villain, and more CGI. You know, because you got used to the CGI in Thor Ragnarok. So I understand where people would come from, some people. But I don't think this was a throwaway villain. I think a lot of people are going to remember Steppenwolf for a long time. Because of his King Ahab complex that he had. Hela did come to reclaim the throne of Asgard. But here's the thing with the difference between that movie and this movie. The people of Asgard, somehow, all of them, all the natives of Asgard, a big, huge, incredible planet and city and domain, all those people were able to go into one ship and get off of Asgard. But guess what? On planet Earth, everybody can't get on a ship and leave the planet. There was no escape route. We were trapped on Earth, having to face Steppenwolf. The other thing is, Asgard is an imaginary place out there, right? This happened on Earth. And not any Earth, not an imaginary fantasy Earth. No, an Earth with countries and stories and cities that are named like our stories or cities or countries. This was happening on all world. And it's basically a metaphor hitting hard and hitting home to what's happening right now. There's an invasion happening right now in the world today. And there's a juxtaposition for this kind of rule by fear. People being ruled by fear. We have terrorist acts happening over the world to keep that fear going, to keep people using their hindbrains, to keep people from coming together, to keep people attacking one another, like in the beginning of this Justice League movie where these white guys were attacking this Islamic woman, to make things go downstream so that Steppenwolf and his parademons could feed off that fear that people have and establish an apocalyptic existence. Now, some people were saying we didn't see enough of Steppenwolf. But Diana showed that Steppenwolf terraforms the worlds, and you could see the Omega symbol all over the ground of those worlds as the ships were moving in, and hell spores and stuff. And I just want to tell you guys this so you understand. When you look at a movie, do understand that you must look for value in it. Go deeper. Go deeper. Because there's always something in every single movie. Anyway, that's my little spoilery part on Steppenwolf. For those of you who didn't think he was that great a villain, I think he was fantastic for me. He served the purpose of the movie. He's not the greatest villain of all time. I think some people think that Zod's a better villain than Steppenwolf. I think Zod has some things going for him. I think Steppenwolf has some things going for him. I think Lex Luthor is a fantastic villain, and he's in this movie in the post-credits scenes. And I can't wait to see what he has up his sleeve next. He's a fantastic villain. Is he better than Zod and Steppenwolf? I think so. I think Lex Luthor's a better villain than Zod and Steppenwolf because he's so complex. Not the average person will say that, but I think so. I think he plays the chess game much better than Steppenwolf and Zod did. Zod lost his life. Steppenwolf's still alive, but he's consumed by fear at this point in time. We'll see what happens in the end. If he will return, it is very likely that we'll hear from Steppenwolf again sometime down the road. Lex Luthor forming the Legion of Doom or the Injustice League, it means at some point in time Darkseid will make some kind of league with Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor obviously made some kind of league with Steppenwolf. It didn't work out. You know, Lex Luthor's still playing the master hand there. He's the manipulator right now. And so it's crazy. It's really crazy. Lex Luthor is, I think, the best villain of the DCEU so far. He's not dead. He's not exiled. He's not banished. And he's still the puppet master. So watch out for that. I think as it stands, I would say Zod is a little bit more complex a villain than Steppenwolf. But I don't think Zod is more powerful than Steppenwolf. I think Steppenwolf's more powerful than Zod because Zod has less resources. Well, he's dead anyway. And he came back as Doomsday, a brainless beast, and he was killed again. So if you ask me which is the better villain, I would say Steppenwolf, okay? Steppenwolf's a much better villain. In fact, I don't think Superman or Wonder Woman or any of them could kill Steppenwolf. I don't think he's killable. So I think he's much more powerful than Doomsday and much more powerful than Zod. So if I'm thinking about it, yes, Zod had a little bit more psychological complexity to him. Well, Steppenwolf's a hell of a lot more powerful than him. So if I was to go with the villain that I think in villain order right now, I would go with Lex Luthor, Steppenwolf, Zod, Ares, and then Zod's right-hand woman, which was I forgot her name, Feora Ul, and then Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller was a hell of a villain as well. Nobody really thinks of her as a villain, but yeah. And then I think we would go with the Joker last in this universe for now. The Joker, I think, and then you have Enchantress and her brother. They're at the bottom of the heap. So that's how I look at it. I know you guys are gonna be like, you got Steppenwolf ahead of Amanda Waller? Yeah, I do. She's good. She's good. She plays it really nicely, and she should really be higher up the ladder. But we haven't seen enough of her. So Lex Luthor's at the top right now in this universe. He runs things. He's a really smart guy. He's a really smart guy. So, yeah, that's how it goes. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me, who is your best villain in the DCU at this point in time? By the way, I think that the rankings of the DCEU movies go like this. I have BVS at number 1. Then I have Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, and Justice League. They're all vying for spots after that. And then the last one I have is Suicide Squad. So if you want to know how I'm ranking these movies, they're really neck and neck right now. I think Wonder Woman, for the casual person, is probably ranked above Justice League. I think Justice League is probably ranked above Man of Steel because I think the average fan is going to like it a lot more, and it may get critical reception that's higher than Man of Steel at the end of the day. But they're all fine movies, okay? I think Man of Steel is a better movie than Wonder Woman, but barely, and I may change my mind. And I think the Justice League is going to get past both Man of Steel and Wonder Woman when all is said and done, because it incorporates so much from Man of Steel and Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman and brings it to a closure. So I think, in the end, I think Justice League's probably going to be the second ranked film in my... When the dust settles, I think it's going to be the second ranked film out of all of them. And I think it's an extremely enjoyable experience. I think the action in it is better than all of them, all the DCEU films, because you have to think about how much action was in the film and also the level of action. And I think Justice League had the most action, and I thought the level of action was also either very competitive with the best scenes in BVS and Wonder Woman and Man of Steel, or it surpassed some of those scenes in some of those films. So I think in terms of action, this is the best. This is the most action, and it's the best film in that respect. I thought dynamics, I thought story was a little bit weak, but the plots, the subplots of the story were great. And I thought that in terms of villain, I thought Steppenwolf was a better villain than Ares. Any day, any time. He was a better villain than Ares. I thought he's a much more powerful villain than General Zod. And the only villain I think that surpasses him is Lex Luthor. Enchantress doesn't really... She's not that great a villain. You know, she's not as developed either as a villain. So I think Steppenwolf, she's powerful, but still she was taken down by humans. So, you know... Nah. She was killed, too. So, in all of the villains, I think Steppenwolf... I think he's second in line. All the other villains, they either got killed or they went to some other dimension or something. So, no, I think Steppenwolf is the next most powerful villain. And he's pure evil. Like, all the rest. Enchantress, she wanted to get back the people of the world and enslave them, but she had a grudge. She had a vendetta, right? And she was still under control of Amanda Waller. Steppenwolf, on the other hand, he's just pure evil. I mean, he and Lex Luthor, they get along fine because they're just so evil, you know. So, if you ask me, Steppenwolf is a formidable villain in my opinion. People talk about it was all CGI. I just didn't get it because I didn't see any really strange movements by him. Even how he moved, his mouth moved, was okay for me. You know. So that's what I got to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You guys have a great one. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to donate, subscribe, share.